Hello and welcome to this India Today special. 2021 has been a year like no other, a year of a roller coaster ride for Indian and global economies as COVID variant after variant threatens to disrupt and destroy lives and livelihoods. What is the big picture then? Joining us now is a very special guest, one of the world's most influential voices on the economy, former Reserve Bank of India Governor and Professor at the Booth School of Business, Chicago, Dr. Raghuram Rajan. Thank you very much for joining me. What's the big picture? Because just as we thought it was safe to predict a global economic recovery, along comes Omicron. Do you fear that we are again heading towards uncertain times?
Well, we are in uncertain times. We never got out of it. And you know, there are multiple factors at work here. First, of course, is the virus and its ever-morphing variants. Nature is telling us you can push back, but you can't completely control it. And what is true, however, is that at least when you look at the path of the variants of the virus, we have gotten better. Hospitalizations are lower than in the past. Of course, the virus is also changing. We don't know if Omicron is just more infectious or whether it's also more deadly, whether it creates the same level of hospitalization per number of cases. We will know soon. But the hope is we are getting better at defending against the virus, and it becomes something which becomes part of the background scenery as so many other diseases and infections have become. Now, on the response economically, the initial response was massive lockdowns. We're seeing far fewer of them. We're learning to live with the virus, with perhaps a few exceptions like China, which are still trying to eradicate it completely, and therefore are more likely to go into lockdowns and disruptive economic situations. So what's the bottom line? Bottom line is we spent enormously in industrial countries in fighting the early waves of the virus. The good news is a lot of that spending has supported economic activity, and there's still a lot of pent-up demand waiting to come out as more goods are available, as more services become available. So that is the positive boost to the world economy. And we're seeing it across the world, even in countries that haven't had similar levels of stimulus, because exports are roaring. They're going through the roof. So that's the good side. What's the bad side? The bad side is there's a lot of scarring. There's a lot of scarring, especially in countries that haven't been able to put out support. And you can see it in Latin America, you can see it in South Asia, you can see it in India, that much more unemployment, or at least much more rural employment, which is a form of unemployment, which is sort of unprecedented. So in a sense, the world is dividing into two, the countries that are doing really well, the countries doing not so well, and within country, again, it's dividing between those who have been affected by the virus and who are really hit hard, and those who have not and who have a lot of money to spend. And India is no different. There is a division even within India, the upper middle class versus the lower middle class.
Sure, there's this India versus Bharat divide, the sort of two countries that only seems to have got accentuated in these pandemic times. I'll come to that in a moment, but is your sense that the worst is over? That perhaps we will see a steady economic recovery, even allowing for these variants, assuming that they're not as deadly as the previous ones?
I think, given that assumption, we are on the way out. That we are learning to live with the virus, and we are learning how to manage our economies in this process. And of course, the amount of pent-up demand is going to take us still a little further. Now, of course, there's the other disease which we are facing, which is the excess, which results in inflation. I mean, part of what people focus on is the supply side constraints. But what they don't accept that easily is the level of demand is also enormous relative to normal times, especially in certain sectors. Goods demand has gone up because you can't spend on services. As a result, it has fouled up the supply chains because so much is being asked. The problem, of course, is the longer this stays in a state of snafu, the more it spreads into prices. You can see higher transportation costs are now showing their way into higher prices. You can see labor very tight in many industrial countries, showing up in higher wages, higher inflation. And of course, inflation doesn't stay restricted to one part of the world, it spreads more widely. So the problem we are seeing now is perhaps excess demand relative to supply, which is resulting in higher inflation. Number of emerging markets, central banks have already started tightening. And so what that does is constrain the amount of space down the line.